Alright, where was I?
Not howlers.
So these are night howlers then. These flowers. So that means Judy didn't confirm her night howlers theory.
Night howlers! That's what Munchus was afraid of! The wolves are the night howlers!
She just assumed she was right without getting any of the facts again.
You are a dumb bunny.
She must have told the other police about the night howlers theory in a report though, right? Apparently, not one of them looked up anything to do with night howlers, despite that case literally being related to an outbreak of what is apparently an unknown disease spreading across the city. So this flower is what's being used to turn animals savage. I feel like I don't even really need to ask, but how is it not common knowledge that this plant can be used to do this? One of the first things humanity does when it finds something new is experiment with it. And if it's a plant, we experiment with its effects on animals and then the human body, because some of them are incredibly useful. Not one person has ever eaten one of these plants. No child has ever picked one up from a box and taken a bite. There is a reason there are choking hazards on Lego sets, and that reason is that babies, toddlers, and kids are dumb. They put whatever they can find into their mouths because they don't realize how dangerous some things can be when you eat them. The effects of this plant would surely be well documented. Obviously, simply eating it wouldn't trigger the savage effect because that would ruin the entire movie. But do they really expect us to believe that no scientist has ever discovered the effects this plant can have when refined? Not one?
Zero!
That's a serious stretch, but I suppose it depends on how these effects were eventually discovered. Now, let's consider that Judy grew up in a family where plant husbandry was kind of a thing, so much so that she knows the Latin name for this plant by heart, but not the colloquial one.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
She must have learned about this plant from her parents, because if she learned it from a book, there's no way the colloquial name wouldn't also be in there. But there's also no way that if they taught her this stupid-ass name for it, then they wouldn't have also taught her the normal one. They wanted her to grow up and be a farmer, and normal people don't know this plant name, they just call them night howlers. Just like how normal people don't call poppies this. Now that I'm thinking about it, when Lloyd was talking about the plants earlier, she mentioned they were Class C Botanical. So these things have actually been classified by someone then. Meaning they must have experimented with the effects they can have on other creatures, right? Because you can't properly classify something until you find out what it can do. So it must be that the plants don't do anything on their own. Maybe someone figured out some revolutionary refinement process and added a bunch of other stuff that makes it dangerous. That wouldn't be too bad as a justification, I suppose.
Yeah, Terry ate one whole when we were kids and went completely nuts.
No! No! You had it all and you blew it!
I am trying. I'm really trying to help you out, movie, but you gotta work with me.
Help me! Help me!
So these things will actually cause the savage effect on consumption. And it doesn't even need refining or for something else to be added, you can just eat it raw and then you become highly aggressive. And these things are just sold in your average flower shop with no restriction whatsoever. And we now know that not only have animals eaten these things, but it's also known that they cause the people who eat them to lose it. And you're still telling me these things aren't restricted or controlled at all. Am I seriously supposed to believe the Hops family is the only one to know about this and they just also kept it to themselves this whole time? Well, actually, that's not true either, is it? Because they just brought it up in casual conversation and told the whole story. So they're not even hiding that this happened, and yet Judy never knew that night howlers could do that. Then again, maybe they did tell her previously and the story just slid right off her smooth-ass brain. So the writers expect us to simultaneously believe that no one has figured out this common garden plant turns you savage, despite the fact the farmers who grow it know it can turn you savage.
Right.
If somebody discovered this effect in a common plant in our world, there would be an immediate worldwide response to restrict it as much as possible and experiment with and find countermeasures for the effect it causes. Because that shit's just a time bomb waiting to happen. A time bomb that has apparently already gone off in this world, but no one really cared about it until it started happening in the city. Meaning if Judy had told the police about her night howler theory, this truth would have probably come to light a lot sooner, because someone with more brain power than our protagonist, which isn't saying much, would have made the obvious connection between the animals going savage and the apparently common garden plant with the exact same name that also happens to cause frenzy when eaten, and the cure for the night howler drug would be well on the way to completion already. Instead, it seems Judy told nobody about her theory. Either that, or everyone in the police station is an imbecile, which isn't too hard to believe at this point either, so take your pick, I guess. And we only get this revealed now after weeks of attacks and maulings.
Dumb bunny.
A bunny can go savage.
My goodness! Turns out my completely baseless accusations were a mite inaccurate. Truly no measure of foresight could have predicted this outcome.
Keys! Keys, keys, keys! Hurry, come on! I need to find Nick. Please.
Why exactly? I mean, obviously, if I were you, I'd want to apologize too, but gonna be honest, we've kinda got more pressing concerns at the moment. Right now, you've got crucial information nobody else possesses that will help in developing a cure for the savagery affliction. Like, yeah, sure, find Nick and all that, because you've got a lot to apologize for.
I don't believe you people.
What do you mean, you people?
But maybe do it after telling the police chief about your breakthrough this time. Please, don't just leave him out of the loop again. She isn't going to report any of this, is she?
Nope. Nick?
Man, is there a character dumber than Lloyd Christmas that I can reassociate her with? I legitimately feel bad comparing her to Lloyd. He does not deserve that.
I bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day. 10 to 1. You're on.
I'm gonna get you.
I don't know how, but I'm gonna get you.
And lobotomy patients are disqualified, by the way, because they're the obvious answer.
But predators shouldn't suffer because of my mistakes.
Then tell the chief about your breakthrough. Tell the chief of police, the literal chief of police for the entire city, who you would obviously have no problem getting noticed by because I assume you're very well known at this point as the rabbit that went on a weird tirade about predators being primitive savages live on TV.
But I can't do it without you.
You literally can! In fact, there's an entire building, one might even say a station, of animals, also known as officers, ready to work on this. But, you know, one con artist who kinda hates you works too, I guess. Wait, I just realized, I'm being dumb. Judy has a phone. She could just call him up real quick if she wanted, whenever she wanted. Time is very much of the essence here. You need to get this information to someone who can use it quickly and you know you can trust the chief. Oh man, it's a good thing Judy doesn't wear shoes. Those laces would be a real brain teaser. So she finds Nick, finally apologizes, and I won't hold anything against her for it.
I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't blame you. I was ignorant and small-minded. And after we're done, you can hate me. I was a horrible friend.
It's a pretty great apology for how insulting she was. The voice acting is great, and if I was being nicer to this movie, I might spend longer on this scene, but everything it's been built on is awful, and her character is already nonsensical at best and destroyed at worst, so giving the dialogue praise would just be in spite of those massive issues. Issues which do a lot to drain any enthusiasm I could ever have to cover what I like about this scene. And just in case you thought me accepting that this scene is good might herald improvements to come, I would just like to mention that we have almost hit the point at which this script self-detonates with the force of 1,000 suns. No, it still hasn't quite done that yet. So now working together again, Nick and Judy plan their next course of action.
We are gonna follow the Night Howlers. Know this guy?
Oh no. No, don't do it. Please don't. She's dumb enough already.
We both know those weren't moldy onions I caught you stealing. What were you gonna do with those night howlers, Weaselton?
Oh my god. This confirms it. The movie gets worse, again. This confirms that Judy knew all along the plants this guy stole earlier in the movie were called night howlers. Because after getting Nick, this is the first place she comes. She doesn't need to confirm if the plants he stole that she called by their stupid flumbus name were colloquially called night howlers, because she already knows. She's actually too stupid to do basic word association.
The eyes are open, the mouth moves, but Mr. Brain has long since departed.
She could not make the connection between the mysterious night howlers connected to this case and the plant that is literally called a night howler.
You have been a bit thick.
A fucking pastry chef figured it out for her. Are you trying to make her incompetent?
Now you ain't talking, Rabbit, and ain't nothing you can do to make me.
Why would you admit that you have more to say? Just say that you were going to sell them and that you never met who you were working for because you got caught. Pretend to be a dead end so you don't actually end up dead. Well, then again, there's no reason for him to be scared of Judy. She doesn't have anything on him, and it's not like she's gonna have him killed or anything. Also, how is this guy not in jail? He stole from a shop and then recklessly endangered multiple lives, with one person only surviving because Judy was on hand to help. How long has it been since the mayor got arrested? Did this guy have a trial? Did he serve prison time? Has it been months, or are the writers just forgetting about the little crimes he committed because it would prevent them from having the scene they want? Why am I even asking? What? How did we get from here to here? Why did we end up here? Why are we making it canon that Judy is in bed with the Mafia, who murder people? Why? You may think I'm overselling her involvement with them, but she is now the godmother of a Mafia boss's granddaughter.
She's a cop! And the godmother to my future granddaughter.
Something like this is supposed to weigh on a morally upstanding character. Why don't we see how she takes the news?
I'm gonna name her Judy.
What's wrong with you?
She should want to distance herself from criminals whom she knows from her own experiences kill people regularly. And I don't want to gloss over that scene we just covered, because there was a great scene back there that we just passed right by without even acknowledging that makes far more sense than this. Weaselton not talking gives Judy another opportunity to throw the book at him like she did with Nick. Only this time we could get the satisfaction of him helping her out because their goals are aligned for once. It's such a simple payoff that would make a previous scene more meaningful and completely remove the whole Judy now has direct criminal ties issue. She doesn't even go to them begrudgingly. They're her first choice. So Weaselton gives them the location of the Rams who he was hired by to steal night howlers.
That was easy.
Why is this guy growing night howlers in an underground lab like they're some black market item? It's legal for people to grow these things on countryside farms and sell them in stores. Just grow them outside, you weirdo. You could make way larger batches that way using natural light. Also, why did he get the weasel to steal those bulbs in the first place? We find out very soon that these Rams are working for someone else to turn predators savage. Buy the bulbs normally. No one would think twice, and there'd be no risk of the weasel talking if he gets caught because he wouldn't even be involved. And you would no longer be connected to somebody who literally committed a crime to get the bulbs you need. I know this scene is supposed to be a big Breaking Bad reference, even down to the characters' names.
Alright, Walter and Jesse are back, so I'm leaving now.
But Walt and Jesse stole the methylamine they needed because they didn't have any other option.
Where's the methylamine?
Yeah, well, that's where I ran into, some trouble. Well, half this crap I could just buy, right? But this methylamine, not so easy.
They didn't do it for a laugh. If they could have bought it, they would have, because that's way less risky. The only other option they had was to pay two thieves 10 grand they didn't have, which is why Walter decided to cut out the middlemen.
So why don't we just steal it ourselves?
And night howlers are just plants. You're not exactly going to have to break the bank to buy a few. Wow, pretty lucky that he walked into the room backwards. Otherwise, he might have caught these two immediately. And the fact they were so surprised by him being here tells me they probably didn't sweep the area either. Because if they had, we would have had a scene where they decide how best to distract him so they can snoop undisturbed. But you know what would have allowed them to sweep the area and clear out any hostiles and examine the grow lab? A police raid. But that wouldn't work because,
It wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work because you just get on with polishing those boots.
What's the mark? Cheetah and Sahara Square.
Not 1 minute after you first lay eyes on this setup, you already have the shooter himself confirming that he's not only carrying out hits on people, but is also working for someone else. And please also take note that she isn't recording any of this. We know that she knows to do that, but here she simply doesn't, despite the fact that all the evidence she could ever possibly need is right here in front of her, and she's listening to one of the people running this operation admit to everything. That, by the way, is another reason why you would want to grow these plants separately to where you refine them. That way, if anyone who didn't belong here were to break in, they at least wouldn't know what was being processed. All they'd see is a strange blue liquid, and they'd have to run tests to figure out what it was. As it stands, all someone has to do is take one photo with the grow lab and the refining equipment in the same shot and send it to the police, and everyone would know what was going on. Judy doesn't do that though. If she took a video, she'd even have his damning conversation and all this other evidence.
What's the mark? Cheetah and Sahara Square.
You literally could not ask for a clearer confession.
I hit a tiny little otter through the open window of a moving car.
I stand corrected.
And oh my god, what is this shot? And I don't mean the camera angle. What is this joke of a shot? If the window didn't happen to be open, he never would have even had a shot in the first place. But ignoring that, just look at the shot he has to make anyway. That's about a 2-second window to hit a moving target side on from, let's be generous and say 40 meters away. Through the window of a moving car with tree branches and foliage in the way, which, because you're firing easily destructible pellets and not real bullets, your shot cannot hit because if it does, it will splatter in the air long before it ever reaches the target. How on earth did he set this up? Why on earth did he set this up? This is quite possibly the worst location you could choose to try and make this shot. I suppose this chemist just also happens to be a Deadeye marksman or something, because this would require some serious talent to pull off. The distance isn't really the big problem here, it's the tiny time window and the even tinier target. He even remarks on it, because it is remarkable that he made that shot in the first place. He knows how good he is.
I hit a tiny little otter through the open window of a moving car.
And all they had to do to fix it was show him taking the shot while Manchus was parked. That would still be convenient because the window would have to be down, but it's just about, a million times better. And then, as if it couldn't get worse, just look at the gun he's using. It doesn't even have a stock, and the movie expects me to believe he still managed to make this shot despite everything I just mentioned. I suppose this guy is just a skilled chemist who also moonlights as this universe's Deadshot.
Not so fast, Deathstroke.
Isn't Deadshot supposed to be what?
Cheetah and Sahara Square.
I know they're fast. I can hit them.
It doesn't matter if they're fast. The entire point of this is to do it stealthily. They're only going to realize they're in danger after being hit, at which point it's too late. Kinda seems like this line is only there to prompt him talking about shooting Otterton so our protagonists can have their realization moment. Once again, very lucky that this guy even had a shot on Manchus in the first place. If he were using a normal gun, this wouldn't be a problem because bullets go through glass cars and even thick wood like paper, so there'd be nowhere his targets could hide.
I know how to make my car bulletproof.
Oh yeah?
Really? Careful, you've got a bit in the door.
Shut up.
Only a little bit, but...
Behold. That would stop an RPG.
Yeah. It's gone straight through.
And it had kept going.
Oh, Lord!
Oh, my God. How's that happened?
Yeah, you're going to be all right now, aren't you, mate? You'll be fine.
Nothing to see here.
This doesn't even have the penetration power of a dart gun because it doesn't break the skin. It shoots people with, and I'm literally just guessing here, but what I think are fragile glass balls with Night Howler in them. And then there's the spray from the pellet. This is why you would either use syringes or slip them the drugs in their food, because Night Howler is going all over those seats and is leaving a massive amount of evidence. Unless they establish that it evaporates in the air or something. Oh, wait, no, we have confirmation. They have literally canonized the opposite. Lovely, great. Every time I try and help this movie, I swear to God. The chances of that spraying onto surrounding mammals, potentially herbivores, and causing them to lose it as well is unacceptably high, if the plan is to only dart predators. If this is their delivery method, there is no way you wouldn't also have prey accidentally going insane and ruining the entire plan. And this raises so many questions about how no one has figured out that predators are being drugged yet. This delivery method might actually be worse than just using a syringe because it leaves a sample of the drug right there on their necks. and that would be consistent for every single predator that's been dosed, making it extremely easy for the police to establish a clear pattern. And the fact they haven't managed to do that yet is nothing but a cavernous plot hole that would swallow the entire story with it if it hadn't already imploded multiple times. At least if you used a syringe, the drug would be mixed in with their blood, and upon testing it would be less clear if someone was doing it maliciously or if the carnivores had just been exposed to something that triggered a sudden state of savagery and your super secret drug wouldn't get sprayed all across the immediate vicinity. The fact the police haven't figured any of this out yet is hilarious on its own, but once again, this movie manages to not only make them dumb, it makes them quite literally as incompetent as it possibly could have, because if this is the delivery method, that means they literally didn't notice the suspicious dark blue patch on the neck of the polar bear they brought in.
Are you blind?
It literally couldn't stand out more, and I'm supposed to believe they missed it. And I'd say now is a pretty appropriate time to finally talk about how this stuff is delivered. It's not ingested, it's not injected, and it isn't breathed in as a gas. They just sploosh it on your skin and that's it, you're done? No more higher brain function for you? What does it? Is it the smell? Are there pheromones in the air? Well, that can't be it, because these two numbskulls were wandering around the drug lab without protection and they didn't even feel off. It might have been interesting if they'd started to snap at each other unexpectedly and acting like they hate each other only to realize it's the unrefined night howler pheromones in the air, but no. So all that's left that I can think of is that the juice is just absorbed through your pores, but there's still going to be copious amounts left on the fur. Apparently no one noticed that over the weeks that this has been happening. Are all the police just that lucky in that they never accidentally touched the suspicious blue marks? How did no one else go savage trying to subdue them? This would be so much simpler if they just used a dart gun, or a syringe, something to get it into the bloodstream. And there's only really one reason I can think of for why the writers would have chosen to use this awful delivery system for the drug. The only possible explanation I can come up with is that Disney wasn't happy with one of their PG films showing a drug being administered via a syringe. But no, for the final version it just had to be stupider because it wouldn't be a modern Disney movie if it made sense. Now, I'm fully willing to admit it might not have been a studio decision to change that, but regardless of who changed it, they made it worse. By the way, this guy is wearing a gas mask, probably because of the night howler fumes in the room. Now, immediately, an intelligent character should become very concerned that they might just start rolling around on the floor and tearing each other's throats out because of the effect it can have. So, of course, these two don't even mention it. Do not forget, by the way, that without any refining whatsoever, when eaten, these plants are strong enough to cause animals to frenzy. Yet the leaves fermenting in a room filled with equipment designed to refine this stuff and a refined cup of it right there? Nope. No effect at all.
It better have the extra foam this time.
We need to get this evidence to the ZPD.
True, but attempting to hijack a decrepit train car is not a solid strategy. In fact, it's not a strategy. She's seen the lab, the people running it are here, all she has to do is pull her phone out, call it in, and the police will raid this place and take all the evidence in. Where are they going to go? There is nowhere here to hide. Instead, she's going to rely on a disused train car being all fueled up and ready to go after sitting there God doesn't even know how long, and on her being able to navigate the city railway system safely.
It would take a miracle to get this rust bucket going. Well, hallelujah.
Funny, but lampshading the issue doesn't solve it. Pointing and laughing at how bad your script is doesn't make it any better, it just means that now everyone else is laughing too. The problem being that I'm laughing at you, not with you. I'm sorry, what? You're telling me that the door glass is impact resistant, but the windshield isn't? Okay.
Do not stop this car!
Okay, but where are you going exactly? You said you were getting the evidence to the ZPD. Does the police HQ have a train station built under it? What's happening right now? What's the plan, Lloyd? Are we just driving until we find someplace kinda close to the ZPD, despite the fact they can't stop until they get these rams off their back?
There's another train coming!
So they speed up to avoid the train, but the increased speed topples the car over. Very luckily, it doesn't go careening over the side to kill everyone in the street below, and to be clear, my problem is not that Judy tells Nick to speed up and takes that risk. My problem is that they shouldn't even be here in the first place. If she had called the police earlier, no one would be in danger. Instead, she just went gung-ho and put... I'm not even going to bother counting the amount of people that are probably in the streets below. Definitely hundreds of lives in danger.
I was top of my class at the academy.
Fire!
Instead of going over the edge, it slides over here while a fire has started in the train car. And then, after barely making it out alive, Lloyd and Harry sit staring, literally slack-jawed at a live 10-meter-long frag grenade.
Do you want to explode?
They know there's a fire going on in there. There's obviously going to be volatile chemicals. I can kind of accept Nick not immediately moving because he's just a normal-ish person in this world and the shock could easily get to him. But once again, there is no excuse for Judy, who has already proven herself extremely proactive in a crisis. She should immediately be dragging him to cover, because if that thing detonates, stray debris could easily obliterate the both of them, and she should know that. Explosions can be so unpredictable when it comes to the damage they do, and if they die, then no one is going to be able to fill the chief in on what's going on.
Okay, maybe some of the evidence survived.
Gee, it sure would have been a good idea to take some photos of the lab before you blew it up. Maybe a video? You know, like you did earlier in the movie, seeing as how everyone seems to be in an expository mood whenever you're around. This is why getting to cover would have been a good idea.
Come on! We gotta get to the CPD!
Do you? Just wait a few minutes and the police will have you both in handcuffs, since as far as they know, a bomb just went off in the middle of the city. Twice. So they run upstairs and are immediately confronted by Bellweather.
Judy!
Is that the soundtrack of an approaching moron?
We found out what's happening. Someone's darting predators with a serum.
Why in the hell am I talking to you?
You know her, sure, but you have in your hands, and your thick skull, evidence and information that will help the police bring the savage predators round. If I turned and saw this in the next room, I would keep running, because right now time has literally never been more of the essence. For some ungodly reason, nobody knows that night howlers make animals go savage. Meaning, there could be a million side effects from long-term exposure that no one knows about. You need to cure them as soon as possible, and I would consider wasting even a few minutes unacceptable at this point.
How did you know where to find us?
So, very soon, Bellweather will be revealed as the twist villain. Unfortunately, the uncovering of her deception is twofold in its stupidity. Judy simply starts suspecting her, which I would like to appreciate because this is the time that she needs to be on guard. But it just doesn't line up with her characterization throughout the rest of the movie. She has been so dim-witted up until this point. So for her to suddenly take a cautious approach with somebody that we know she trusts is borderline out of character. Also, how did you know where to find us is the wrong question. Who says she was looking for you? This could just be a chance encounter. The correct question to ask is why haven't you asked about the explosion? Because her being so calm about it implies two things. One, that she has knowledge of what caused it, and two, she has ulterior motives here that take priority over the explosion. It kind of feels like they're attempting a dread moment here.
Two of us called in the 1024. Wondering why you didn't ask about the other one.
Let's move it!
But it just doesn't hit quite right because Judy doesn't suspect her for the right reasons. And even ignoring that, the entire idea that somebody this stupid could see through a deception is laughable.
Stop it!
But it gets worse because Bellweather's deception here is pitiful and doesn't line up with how she's been characterized either.
I'm so proud of you, Judy. You did just a super job.
She somehow isn't smart enough to ask the obvious questions that any normal person would about the explosion. Nor does she ask why Judy is even here. All of which makes her immediately suspicious because she seems awfully calm despite the explosion. She needs to come across here as harmless, concerned about the explosion, and determined to help in order to gain Judy's trust. And this is a character that's all about deception. She successfully manipulated her way into being the mayor. But instead of doing anything that she should, she congratulates Judy for doing a great job? With what? What do you know that she doesn't? Doesn't even try to act surprised when Judy tells her about the Night Howler. Then, when she's asked how she knew where to find them, she doesn't even bother trying to come up with a believable excuse. Yes, thinking on the spot can be difficult, but she should have been thinking of one before she got here. Her goal at the beginning of this scene is to deceive Judy into giving her the case, and she didn't even think of a reason why she might have come here. An easy one is that she's the mayor and is checking out the renovations for the Natural History Museum, and she brought bodyguards because of all the danger across the city. It's an excuse that sounds perfectly plausible that Judy cannot refute without more information. Instead,
I'll go ahead and I'll take that case now.
You know what?
too stupid to live. Now that I think about it, how the hell is Bellweather even here? The ram who called her told her they had a
situation at the lab.
And
It just got worse.
just before he hangs up. If that's all she knows, then she basically knows nothing. And Nick and Judy only ended up here because the tracks were changed. Even if we assume that the ram left behind called up Bellweather again and continued filling her in, there is no way she could have predicted Judy would end up here as opposed to anywhere else in the city, and yet here she is. So she somehow not only found out exactly where Judy was using telepathy, I guess,
I think words I would never say.
but she also managed to rally her men and get here all in at best 3 or 4 minutes. So what? She just got astronomically lucky that she happened to be taking a nearby stroll with her henchmen when the train car blew? I'm sorry. Now that I'm thinking about them calling her up, who exactly were those rams to Bellweather? They are criminals, skilled chemists, and snipers. Where the hell did she get in touch with them in the first place? How did she get involved with them? I've already brought up Dredd, so I'll mention it again. In that movie, we don't really even need an explanation for how Mama got to where she is, since the city is so crime-ridden already that new gangs probably rise and fall every day. But we still get one.
Ex-hooker from the S9 Pleasure District. Quit working when she got sliced up by a pimp. Block legend says she feminized the guy with her teeth, took over his business interests, and never looked back.
Her trademark is extreme violence, which puts her a cut above the other gangs, and with how lawless the city is, that's an automatic explanation for how she managed to get away with it for so long.
How'd she get away with it?
You know how often we get a judge up in peace trees?
Bellweather has no such explanation when she really needs one. She's not a former prostitute turned gang leader with nothing to lose in a crime-ridden world. She's a career politician putting everything on the line for a chance to achieve political power and turn people against predators. I can accept not getting her full backstory, but I need at least one line for how she got connected with such a weird group. Did she have prior criminal connections? This whole turning predators savage plan was her idea, but was she working with them to discover a way to do it, or did she already know about Night Howler? That plant isn't a secret, but the movie thinks it is, so for the sake of argument, let's treat it like one. How did she, as a politician, find out about it? Was she paying them to find a way to turn predators savage and that was what they came up with, or did she go to Johnny the Shoeshine guy for a tip? How did she even pitch this idea to them in the first place? Did she just rock up to their hideout like,
"Hello, sir. Hey, I know you don't know me, but would you be interested in a felony quantity of methamphetamine?"
If she'd been built up as having something of a shady reputation, this wouldn't bother me as much. But she somehow managed to do all of this while maintaining a squeaky clean reputation. Just a couple of lines. Even one, that's all I need. Something. Anything to justify this. Instead, as you've likely already guessed, we get nothing, and I'm just left to headcanon an explanation. Anyway, despite the questions this raises, you could actually argue this reveal helped solve a big issue earlier in the movie. When you think about it, she could have been the one pushing the chief so hard to find the missing predators, not the mayor.
City Hall is right up my tail to find them.
Hoping Lionheart would be exposed and jailed for kidnapping. However, there is not a single line or even a shot in the movie that implies she was the reason the police were going so hard. So I really don't think that interpretation holds up at all, because there's nothing to support it outside of what I've invented in my own head. With a bit of work, this reveal could have improved the movie somewhat, but once again, the writers didn't put the effort into actually addressing any of it. So I guess it really is just canon that Lionheart was pushing for his own kidnappings to be investigated.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Get them.
Well, that's just fucking great! You know what that is? Do you know what that is? That's just fucking great!
Oh, God. It's getting painful at this point. Our valedictorian cop does not look where she's going, while the random con artist who has never trained a day in his life does. The inner malfunctionings of her brain are truly a marvel to be studied.
Welcome to the inside of your head. It's kind of empty in here.
How? How did she pass valedictorian? I want to know, movie. Sure, she passed the physicals fair and square, but there is a significant theory side. Like, it just does not make sense. Well, unless she passed a couple of physicals that weren't on the curriculum.
Do you know what you'd need in that situation? What's that? You need anal lube.
Why isn't Nick the one to trip here? It's such an easy thing to get right. It makes more sense for him to do this. It makes less sense for her to do this. Like, come on. And with how big they are, those rams wouldn't even be seconds behind. The amount of time it takes her to get back up is way too long for them not to catch her. And yes, this is technically a small issue, but it has a huge effect because the rams not immediately finding her, as they obviously would, is what allows these two to survive.
Come on out, Judy.
I'd be a bit more worried if I were you, love. Genuinely, even if there's no fire exit, this would be a prime time for Judy to get out that phone and call the police. She can't run, Nick is fixing up her leg, and they have no weapons. Well, none that they're willing to use, at least. At this point, the best chance they have is to rely on the police finding them, but she just isn't even trying.
Take the case. Get it to Pogo.
Use your phone! It's one number 3 times. How hard is that? You don't even have to say anything. But since you're already speaking, how about doing that and saying, I'm a former police officer and I'm being hunted in the Natural History Museum and I have information that could save all the savage predators in this city. That's all you have to say.
I can't walk. We'll think of something.
Come on, there has to be at least part of a brain in there. Wait, hold on. Why was I even thinking that she would need to use her phone? As far as everyone should be concerned, someone just detonated a bomb in the Natural History Museum. How are the police not already surrounding the building? No one but these two chuckle fucks know what happened. Everyone within 100 meters of the explosion would have called the police. All they'd have to do is hide from Bellweather until the police get here. Sure, it couldn't hurt to call ahead, but maybe, just maybe, she isn't quite as stupid as I thought she was.
We're on the same team. Underestimated, underappreciated.
She can't be trying to make a point about how the city is purposefully discriminatory against prey because the chief of police is a Cape buffalo. From what I can tell, they are an incredibly difficult animal for others to even prey on, but they definitely aren't predators. Wait, hold on, I'm being a moron again. I need to stop saying that. I've been saying that a lot recently. I'm not that stupid. This movie is just that bad that I keep picking up on new issues. We literally just saw 5 seconds ago Bellweather brought 3 corrupt ram cops with her. Ram or prey? I don't even need to look that up. Same with hippos. They can be predators in that they can easily kill other animals, but they aren't even just herbivores, they're mega herbivores. I guess you could make the argument that these rams aren't real cops and Bellweather just got criminals to dress up in disguises. I mean, you can even see ram cops in the background here. And we already have evidence that prey are capable of getting into notable positions of authority in this world. However, none of this is necessarily bad characterization. Villains are frequently presented as having fundamentally flawed worldviews, and the movie is clearly depicting her as being wrong here. My problem is that Bellweather's worldview is never really addressed beyond this. This is a prime character development opportunity to have Judy bring up her broken worldview and the fact she was the deputy mayor, so we get to see how she justifies what she's doing when confronted. But she doesn't. All that happens in this scene is Bellweather gloats, exposits, and then tries to kill them. I just think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Though I suppose there's nothing wrong with having a simple villain that's just prejudiced against predators cause fuck preds, yo.
Over there!
Wait, guys, where are you going? Why are you running?
Why are you running?
With Judy in the state she is, you need to hide. Come on, it's not hard.
I can't walk.
I can't walk. Let's run for it.
Ah, it's so painful. It's so painful. Ah!
So she monologues a little.
It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground. I hate you.
and pellets Nick with what seems to be Night Howler.
No! Police! There's a savage fox!
You called the police on yourself? You've got 3 officers with you. What is your excuse going to be for why they didn't just jump down and tackle Nick, who is a tiny weak-ass little fox with broken ribs? You know what? I guess she did just say Pops is down, which means as long as Judy dies, she can make up whatever she wants. Oh, why am I even making this argument? It does not matter if she calls the police, they're already on their way. Because, I mean, they obviously know about that, right? People heard that explosion, right? Hang on. Her calling the police means these 3 must be real police. Because if they aren't, it's going to look incredibly suspicious that she was here with 3 people pretending to be police. Alright, so let's pretend for a second that the police weren't already coming here because of the explosion before she called. What if a patrol happens to be right outside and they get here before Judy dies? What exactly is going to be her excuse? You're really gonna have some serious explaining to do, and you literally have the murder weapon on you. There isn't even really anywhere you can hide it if you get caught. Well, at least the villains are on the same end of the bell curve as the heroes, so it's a fair fight, I guess. Either way, if there wasn't already one on her, she's definitely started an invisible clock on herself now for no reason. If she had a modicum of intelligence, then she'd wait until Judy was long dead and the evidence was long gone before calling the literal police on herself. Though I would argue the actual correct strategy is to just not even come here in the first place. I don't think the writers actually realize the explosion would have drawn anyone here, which is why no one ever acknowledges it in this scene. But regardless of what the writers notice, they should still be coming. To have a good chance of getting away with this, Bellweather needs to not expose herself like this in the first place.
They'll be there.
Think of the headline. Hero cop killed.
What? So, hero? Hero?
What the actual fuck did you just say to me right now?
The bint that started riots in the city is currently looked on as a hero by the populace. Are you taking the... Bellweather said this earlier, and I just kind of ignored it because it simply didn't compute.
They're just really scared. You're a hero to them.
I just dismissed the idea that she could be seen as a hero outright because, no.
May have something to do with biology. Something in their DNA. They seem to be reverting back to their primitive savage ways.
There's good in all people. There's good in all people.
Prey fears predator and you stay in power?
Wait, that's it? That's your plan?
It won't work!
Oh my god, she's correct.
I'll be still my heart.
So that's actually Bellweather's big plan. Simply dart predators to keep them down and remain mayor?
And I'll dart every predator in Zootopia to keep it that way.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I can go through this pretty quickly. If you're only gonna dart predators in Zootopia, people will notice they're only going savage in the city, meaning they're going to assume that something unique to the city is what's causing the savagery. The second that people realize that, there's going to be a mass exodus of predators and prey just leaving in droves to protect themselves, and people are going to focus hard on what might be the cause. And because you're using a drug, it's only a matter of time before people figure out they're being dosed with something, assuming it never wears off naturally, that is. If Otterton ever came around, he'd be able to easily tell everybody about the Night Howler drug. Even though Judy should have already told everyone, but let's not beat that dead rabbit anymore. The main point of this plan is that Bellweather remains in power throughout all of this. But she's already set herself up to fail. After Lionheart's kidnapping side business was revealed, even the greatest PR team in the world wouldn't be able to maintain trust in you as his deputy. And the entire idea behind this scheme is that the predator attacks won't end. Meaning, under your leadership, the city is going to continue being just as divided as it is now, if not more. If things don't improve under your guidance, you're probably not going to be looked upon fondly come the next election. In his time, Herbert Hoover was one of the most detested American presidents ever because he had the extremely bad luck of coming into office at the time of the Great Depression. Regardless of whether you are personally to blame, if things go to shit on your watch and you don't take bold action to resolve the crisis, you're in trouble. And it's not as if she can pass the buck here. Who else are the citizens gonna blame but the literal mayor?
Fear always works.
Does not explain how you're going to reliably remain in power. At all. And when people figure out that this is only happening in the city, all it's going to do is drive people away. Where exactly is the prestige in being the mayor of a city on the decline? Now, this next one is a weird problem. If her plan was to use night howlers to cause panic in the city, why, for the first 14, did she only dart them in remote areas of the city? Sure, you'd have 1 or 2 test cases where you get them alone to verify the effects. But after that, you'd go for the most public areas of the city to cause panic, seeing as that was, you know, the entire point of this plan. Even if she had figured out that Lionheart was capturing predators, it's not as though she has to expose him for that to get him out of office. If people realize predators are going savage, trust in him as the mayor is going to be gone no matter what.
How do you think they're going to feel about their mayor, who is a lion?
Which would allow you to step in as his deputy without the baggage of having worked for a kidnapper. Either way, he's out of the picture, so I do not know why she chose to keep darting predators in remote areas, because all that did was slow the execution of her plan down. Anyway, it turned...
Mr. Woods? This is funny to you?
Moving swiftly on. So it turns out she isn't actually dead, and Nick isn't actually savage, because they switched the ammo in the gun for blueberries.
Oh, are you looking for the serum?
Are you looking for the one thing you actually need to turn me into a savage killer?
Well, it's right here.
Really? How lucky for me.
Get them.
Got it.
No!
Of course, she doesn't actually do this because it makes sense.
I framed Lionheart. I can frame you too.
God, just send them. Just send them down there to kill. It's easy. You could... Oh!
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams.
And this means that he was storing that little ball in his breast pocket before he got hit. So it was in his left pocket and... Oh dear. That looks pretty perfectly positioned to crack the ball in his pocket, and, you know, a few ribs as well. In fact, I'd say he's quite incredibly lucky that it didn't. If it had, which, let's be real here, it should have, then their entire plan would collapse before their eyes, and Judy would actually be trapped here with a savage predator.
I salute my fallen enemy!
A better idea would have been to find somewhere to stash the ball so you can recover it later. The police are obviously already on their way, and the chances of Bellweather finding it before they get here aren't high, seeing as how you had plenty of great hiding places in that room. There's props and boxes and animal skulls all over the place. At the very least, hiding it is a far better plan than keeping it on you. Your chances of escape were already pretty bad, and now the only one of these two who can actually fight has torn her leg open. So, getting the one thing that can literally turn Nick Savage away from him and the villains should be priority number 1. But they don't even bring it up as a potential plan.
I framed Lionheart. I can frame you too.
So, she did know Lionheart was capturing predators, and I'm guessing she just adapted her plans to expose him on the fly? Why? All that does is make you look more suspicious. If you want to be mayor for multiple terms, then you need to help keep his kidnapping a secret. Why on earth would she ever send Judy after him if she knew?
I framed Lionheart.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, also, you didn't frame him, you dolt. He committed kidnapping of his own free will. Apparently the writers couldn't be bothered to look up what it means to frame someone either.
Me fail English? That's impossible.
I can frame you too.
Or you could send those 3 strong rams down there to get the serum back from a wounded rabbit and a fox with a shattered ribcage, and then just shoot him for real.
Just do it. Make your dreams come true.
I have no idea why, once Nick reveals the serum, she retreats to framing as her backup plan. If Nick had kept the fact that he still had the serum a secret, as he should have, that would have made her decision to try and frame them make more sense, because as far as she knows, she can't get Nick to kill Judy anymore. Instead, they wrote it so that she does know where the serum is and could send her men to get it, so her immediately flipping to, oh, I can frame them, makes no sense when a better plan is literally right in front of her face. Also, I was kinda hoping somewhere in the back of my mind that when she said she'd framed Lionheart, she'd reveal that she was the one tipping him off to the location of the predators she was darting so he'd capture them. Now, yes, it makes no sense she'd have ever wanted that to happen because it delays her plans, but the movie is telling me that's what happened, so I have to go with it. It's already convenient for her that he started capturing them in the first place, but Bellweather secretly informing the mayor of where the savage predators are would at least kind of imply that she had a plan to become mayor by setting him up and then helping the police catch him so she could step in. But she never says she planned that. It simply isn't in the movie. Lionheart just happened to start finding and capturing the Preds all on his own, meaning Bellweather had no extra plan to get rid of him before that started happening, other than, I guess, hoping Predators going savage would reduce trust in him. Which is honestly a better plan. She should have gone with that one. I guess her entire plan really was just, I will start darting predators, the public will lose faith in the mayor, and I'll take over. Then, in order to stay as the mayor, I'll have to win the next election fairly if it's against another prey animal? I still don't understand why she thinks people are going to re-elect her after the city falls into bedlam on her watch. If she was a character with a shady reputation, you could have inferred that she might be planning to rig the election in her favour, but she isn't.
One voter, 16,472 votes. A slight anomaly?
Not really.
And considering how bafflingly unintelligent she is, I can't believe that someone with such a clean reputation would be able to simply do that.
We're electing idiots.
Oh my god, can just one aspect of your plan make sense, please?
I framed Lionheart. I can frame you too.
And you're going to frame them for what exactly? What exactly can you even frame them for? All they have to say when the police get here is the truth, which is Bellweather's behind everything, she has a case on her that proves someone is drugging predators, and we have the drug being used. All you need to do is get the Rams picked up for interrogation and get them to flip on her.
It's my word against yours.
True, but she knows Judy is trusted by the chief of police at this point in the movie.
The world has always been broken. That's why we need good cops like you.
It doesn't matter what she tells him, he's still going to listen to both sides of the story. And as soon as they find the people running your destroyed drug lab, which won't take long, seeing as how one of them is wrapped around a train signal about 5 minutes away, which Judy knows about and Bellweather doesn't, so she couldn't have organized things to get him out of there, you're in serious trouble. For some reason, she seems to think she's in the clear here, when she knows that Judy has sway in the department. Does she seriously think her word carries that much weight that it'll have them both instantly locked up?
I don't ever tell you suffer from an abundance of confidence.
Not to mention, you are literally still holding in your hand the attempted murder weapon. Put it away, you moron.
I'll dart every predator in Zootopia.
It's your word against yours.
No! Oh. You're supposed to reveal this when the police get here. Not before!
I just want you to think. Do you know what thinking is?
No.
Then you will die stupid.
It's like watching... I don't even know, man. Is there an analogy I can come up with that adequately conveys the Arctic IQ levels on display here? There's a reason that when I see Judy I think Lloyd Christmas, because it feels like I'm watching Dumb and Dumber. She just showed all the leverage she has to the main villain when she's injured and unarmed and doesn't know if the police are close. That is something that belongs in Dumb and Dumber. But it's here. It's here in this movie. This entire scene has just been our heroes and villains trying to out-stupid each other. And it was a hard-won victory too, I will admit that. They both put up amazing fights. Every time Judy is presented with a way to make it out of this scene alive, she chooses to stick her head right back under the fucking guillotine.
Yet another tempting opportunity for suicide beckons.
And no, this scene is not over yet. I've said it before, and I literally just said it again, but it bears repeating. This kind of writing is something I would expect from a comedy or a parody, something that's not trying to be taken seriously as a story.
Put her there. The ring! I can't believe you fell for the oldest trick in the book! What a goof!
Now, yes, there are plenty of comedies that tell serious stories, but there's also plenty that just want to make you laugh. And they are usually written better than this movie is.
At last, we meet for the first time for the last time.
It's your word against yours.
I would ask why she's scared, but at this point we know Bellweather is dim-witted enough to think this means she's been completely outsmarted, despite the fact she still has people here who can just jump down there and grab it off her. And this is the worst aspect of Bellweather's character, which, as it turns out, is the exact same problem Judy has. She's a walking contradiction. As an audience, we're expected to believe that she's smart and devious enough to have organized a criminal conspiracy to spread fear and mistrust among the citizens to push predators down, and facilitate the creation of a drug lab, and organize the covert drugging of predators across the city, while also being stupid enough to, during the finale, show up personally instead of sending her men to do the dirty work, fail to come up with an even halfway convincing lie, exposit her entire plan to the protagonists, call the police on herself, not send her men into the pit to get the Night Howler back, and finally, not put away the attempted murder weapon once she claims she's going to frame them. Believe it or not, these two states of being don't quite mesh together. With everything she's accomplished, the writers have given the impression that she's intelligent and ruthless. But once we see her with the mask off, she's neither of those things. She has less than 10 minutes of screen time in the whole movie, and she's just as much of a paradox as Judy is. Really impressive stuff, guys. Nice character assassination speedrun, I'm not even joking. And then there they are. It's just that simple. The police arrive. They are here now. They have simply entered the scene. No fanfare, no sirens, no commotion as they organize themselves to capture a savage predator because, as far as they know, that's why they're here. Instead of any of that, they waltzed in here, not even announcing their presence. Because not many people know this, that's actually something police are well known for, just entering buildings with hostiles inside without offering warnings to anyone that might be there. It's kind of their trademark, honestly. You definitely don't see the exact opposite all the time in any piece of media that depicts the fucking police.
Mr. Monches? Judy Hop, ZPD.
They also aren't wearing any body armor. They don't have nets or stun guns or tranquilizers or anything really to safely subdue the savage predator they've been told is here. I guess the plan was to just chokeslam it. And oh, the chief is here too. The chief of police took time out of his day to come down and respond to this call. Now, Bellweather mentions specifically that Hops was down, which is probably what drew him here, but all that does is make this funnier. He didn't think her potentially being dead warranted putting his sirens on. And when he actually got there, he took his time, sauntering on in like he couldn't care less if she lived or died. With what he's been told, he should believe that if there's any chance he can save her life, it is a critical matter of time. And he's just swaggering on in like it's a lazy Monday. He doesn't care if she's dead.
Officer Hops is down!
Oh no! Anyway...
Also, why are there so many police here? We've seen the kind of response they give to other predator attacks. They sent 3 people to capture a polar bear, but they send the entire department to capture a fox? Yes, they know a former officer has been attacked, but that doesn't justify sending every single unit in the area to one spot just to gawk. Especially when, as far as they know, there could be another savage predator attack at any moment. And that's it. Bellweather gives up. The police are here, and Bellweather's been caught in the act due to her own idiocy. So, let's just recap what Dumb and Dumber's plan here even was, because you might be thinking, well, they got her to confess. So it turns out trying to run wasn't that stupid because it was all part of the plan. So, they were cornered and Judy was injured. This is when they came up with their plan, which was not to call the police, or try to hide, or turn one of the attackers savage. Although it's likely the police are on their way, there's no way to know for sure. Maybe they're checking the wrong area. Maybe I was wrong and no one heard the explosion. Yeah, right. Either way, Judy couldn't have known Bellweather would call the cops on herself, nor is it a reasonable assumption to make, so she was not planning for Bellweather to call the police. Meaning, their plan amounted to taking the fragile container for the juice that turns you into a savage beast and putting it in Nick's shirt pocket. Nick agreed to this, for some reason, despite the fact it puts him in danger of losing his mind, potentially forever, and killing Judy, when if you give it to her, the worst that can happen since she seemingly doesn't have much of a mind to lose in the first place is Nick gets a few bite marks. Then they decided to run for it and fake Nick going savage. This is where the entire plan completely loses me. What exactly did they think was going to happen by doing this? If Bellweather just watches this happen and says nothing, even if Judy is talking to her, that's it. Your plan is essentially ruined, because you haven't got her confession now. They were counting entirely on Bellweather not immediately killing them or having them searched after being caught. They were relying on her expositing her entire plan to them for some reason. They essentially put it all on her wanting to turn Nick savage while having no exit strategy. Not entirely sure why they ever expected that to happen, but miraculously it did, because the deception of Nick pretending to be savage wouldn't have lasted long if it hadn't. And then they reveal their leverage to her twice in a row.
That is not a plan!
It's barely a concept.
Remind me again why hiding the night howlers somewhere and waiting for the police to arrive wasn't a feasible plan? At the very least, it didn't involve any running.
I can't walk.
12 seconds later. I don't think you have any idea how fast I really am. I'm fast as fuck, boy!
Now, at this point, those of you who have seen the movie might be expecting me to move on, because this is the end of this scene. But there's one more problem I have got to point out that I've been purposefully avoiding mentioning up to now. This next problem took me quite a while to notice, and without any exaggeration, it may actually be in the top 3 biggest problems with this scene. It not only makes certain decisions characters make much worse in retrospect, but it blasts so many gaping holes in the cause and effect this movie was not running on. Focus, if you will, on the background for a second. You'll probably notice there's a building across the street. That building looks pretty familiar. You might say it's got a rather distinct design. Now, when I first noticed this, I dropped everything I was doing to confirm if this building was what I thought it was, and you may not believe me at first because I didn't quite believe it at first either, but that building is the police station. Just repeating that, it's the police station. And it isn't just a police station, it is the police headquarters for the whole city.
The heart of Zootopia, Precinct 1.
The chief of police works there with the biggest concentration of officers across the city. So earlier, when I questioned Bellweather calling the police on herself because if there'd been a patrol on the block she would have easily been caught, well, she actually managed to one-up my worst case scenario. I didn't go stupid enough. I, once again, gave this movie too much credit because I hadn't even considered the possibility she would be within jogging distance of the police HQ. Like, she tried to murder someone and then called the police on herself while holding the murder weapon. And they got stupider than that. But it doesn't quite stop there for characters being dumb. Because while Bellweather called the police on herself, in the same vein, Judy didn't call despite the fact she knows full well that the police HQ is literally across the street.
Oh, there it is!
She points it out here but doesn't think to call, and I will fully admit, when she said this the first time, it went completely over my head. Because she says it so matter-of-factly. It's like it's hiding in plain sight. She says, "There it is," while pointing, and then Bellweather just immediately cuts her off, so I forgot it had been established the ZPD was just across the street because my brain just instantly dismissed that might be a possibility. Because that wouldn't make any sense. And yeah, I know, more fool me for assuming this movie is running on cause and effect this far in. I genuinely didn't think, even after everything I've talked about, that the writers would have the balls to directly acknowledge a problem that big. There is, however, a positive side to this absolutely insane revelation, because now we know how so many officers managed to get here all at the same time. And that's it for the list of positives I have about this scene. Oh, this is so nice of you, movie. This is too nice. You didn't have to give me a shot framing exactly how far the Natural History Museum is from the police station. Oh, that is so kind. Oh, and City Hall is right there, literally right next to the museum. In fact, the only possible way they could be closer is if they were semi-detached. Is this their attempt to justify how Bellweather was able to get from wherever she was to where Judy was so quickly? They put City Hall right next to the museum to, what, try and make the scene make more sense? They still haven't explained how Bellweather even knew Judy had crashed the train in the first place. So if that's the reason these buildings are neighbours, then I don't know why they even bothered. Since all that does is make the scene worse, because now, Bellweather arriving at the Natural History Museum isn't just a plot hole because she couldn't have possibly known Judy had crashed there, it's now also incredibly convenient because out of every building the City Hall just so happened to be next to, it was the exact one that Judy had crashed beneath. That's honestly a first for me. I've never witnessed an earnest attempt by somebody to improve an aspect of a movie not only fail to address the problem, but actually make it worse.
Night Howler antidote is proving effective in rehabilitating the afflicted predators.
Right, so this confirms Judy had all the necessary information to save everybody's lives and just chose not to tell anyone. The only saving grace is that throughout this movie she has been consistently characterized with a legitimately impressive level of stupidity. So I think there's more than enough leeway here to say this is just an instance of her brain malfunctioning. Or, functioning normally. I think we've developed enough of a pattern at this point to say her experiencing rational thought is the malfunction. And as Otterton wakes up, you might now be wondering what his role in all this was, because the movie heavily implies that he was onto the Night Howler operation before he got turned. And we also know he has ties to the mob.
Otterton is my florist. He's like a part of the family.
He just kept yelling about the Night Howlers.
How did he discover Bellweather's operation? Was he perhaps involved with it before having a crisis of conscience and trying to leave? Well, don't you worry, because the movie will not address it in the slightest, which makes you wonder why they even brought it up in the first place. You can't establish that he knew about Night Howler and was targeted by Bellweather because of that, and then just ignore it when it comes time to wrap up the movie. This guy could have very well been involved to a similar degree as the Rams in the drug lab, but we'll never know because nobody bothered to write that scene. They're just ignoring it, hoping you'll forget about it. It's literally what they're doing. And that's it. Oh, we finally reached the end of this absolute trash fire of a movie.
Well, it started badly, and it tailed off a little in the middle, and the less said about the end, the better. But apart from that, excellent.
Okay, I know I said in the first part this movie starts off pretty good, and I still stand behind that statement, but nowhere near as passionately. The intro works on its own, but because of the issues that arise later in the movie, when you consider the rest of it, scenes that I previously thought were fine have hemorrhaged a little in retrospect. It's still the best part of the movie, but that's not a high bar, and this farce of a boxing match is now not even close to the biggest issue the beginning of this movie has. The first thing I want to mention is a world-building issue that's gone unaddressed this whole time, both by me and the movie. This is a problem throughout the movie, but the intro was the best place to address it. Why are there no small mammal officers? This is something the movie never brings up, and it's literally foundational to Judy's character. Her character journey is partly centered around her being a small mammal officer. I can believe that she's the first rabbit officer, but how aren't there already coyotes, foxes, otters, weasels, honey badgers, raccoons, and so on, already working there? They all have different skill sets and can go places these guys can't. I can imagine that predators would be more likely to excel as police, but as the movie itself says,
Our city is 90% prey, Judy.
You'd still have many prey officers, far more than what we see in the movie, and the prey that actually did work there wouldn't all be massive chonkers either. Police don't just respond to crimes, they have to respond to domestic disputes, of which there are many kinds, and general public disturbances. You can't send Wolford to respond to a rabbit family dispute because he's going to scare the shit out of them. If it's to be believed that the kinds of prejudices Judy's family hold about foxes are common in this world for other species.
We have bears to fear, too. Say nothing of lions and wolves. Whoa. You know what? Pretty much all predators. And foxes are the worst.
Actually, your father does have a point there.
Which nicely segues into me asking where in the hell all the rodent police are. You can't send any of these guys to Rodentia for obvious reasons. Even Judy is still Godzilla-sized for them. From the minute this city was built, there would have obviously been rodent police, meaning small animals would always have been a part of the police, but we don't see any, ever. Can you just imagine for a second how effective a flying squirrel officer would be in this place? It'd be like having fun-sized Batman patrolling your streets, scaling buildings and waiting on rooftops for something to happen. And speaking of bats, where are they? I can't really think of a better choice for a reconnaissance unit than a bat. They're small and agile, they can fly, they're good climbers, they blend naturally into dark spaces, they have amazing hearing. Were they excluded from the movie because they can fly? Did that make them too bird adjacent or something? Well, what about flying squirrels then? They're still very recognizably mammals, and what they do isn't so much flying as it is falling with style. If smaller prey officers were in this movie, I'd still be more than willing to accept that of the ones working in the main city, Judy is the smallest of the lot. But no. It seems she is literally the first small prey police officer ever, which I cannot accept. Mr. Big is living proof that rodents can be just as criminal as everyone else, so there would obviously be rodent officers to counter people like him. It's just a glaring piece of world building that's been omitted. This script fucking sucks, honestly. Anyway, getting back to the main plot, the beginning of this movie is still worse in a few more ways. Judy just walking backwards into cement and not realizing was something I overlooked earlier, because I just brushed it off as a joke that only does very minor damage to her character. But looking back, after everything I've talked about, this is downright consistent. It's just another notch on her belt. This fits right in with what I know her intelligence level to be. And I mentioned this earlier as well, but I want to reiterate, the Chief simply chooses not to hand out one of the missing mammal case files. There is no explanation for this anywhere, he just decided Otterton wasn't worth investigating. And finally, the only reason Judy catches the villains of this movie is because Weaselton stole those bulbs from the shop. Which is not something that should have ever happened, because those night howlers could not have cost more than $100 at most, and the Rams still hired him to steal them. Why? They can't have the kinds of skills they're shown to have in the movie, and also be stupid enough to do this. House of Cards doesn't even begin to describe this script, and I'm so much less forgiving to the beginning of this movie in retrospect. It's still nowhere near as bad as the end of the movie, or the middle even, but it doesn't quite get a free pass anymore. Which is a shame because apart from a few small suspect moments, the characterization is generally good, the plot makes sense because it hasn't gotten going yet, and it's easy to get invested. Let's do a quick character overview. Not of everybody, because not everyone deserves it. I don't actually know how much you'd have to fucking pay me to talk about Bellweather again.
Just don't care.
I want to focus specifically on good old Lloyd Christmas, the indisputably dumbest rabbit this side of whatever hemisphere she's on, and her partner in crime, Harry. Early in the movie, Judy's characterization is pretty solid. She has unconventional dreams that she's determined to pursue despite any disapproval, mockery, or difficulty she might encounter on the way.
You don't scare me, Gideon.
We get to see her suffer through and eventually excel at the police training academy through her own resilience before finally being deployed to Zootopia, which clearly characterizes her as steadfast and determined with some typically heroic traits thrown in. Standing up for the kids at the fair despite being at a severe disadvantage and getting scars for it is an easy way to endear the audience to her early on. She professes to have gotten over any biases she might have held against predators, but still takes the spray with her, so now we've got her major character flaw set up as well. From there, it isn't long before we get to see the prejudices she holds against foxes come out, and the fact that she's willing to admit when she's wrong does even more to endear her to the audience. Even if she goes a little far at first.
I'm not looking for any trouble.
It's a good start. Despite this, you show her remaining true to her principles early on, and then as the movie progresses, you push her to the point that her biases and prejudices start to resurface. In concept, it's an easy recipe for a well-written character with a solid arc. Pretty much as soon as she starts working with Nick, her characterization develops cracks. She keeps him around after the Naturalist Club when she really doesn't need him at all. Her train of thought breaks down at the "I'm not in the system yet" stop and never moves on for the rest of the movie, not even after she finds the kidnapper's hideout. She's already shown that she has a stellar memory for even mundane laws and is clever enough to outsmart Nick to get him to work with her in the first place, so her being unable to piece this together just marks the start of a soon-to-be serious crack in her character. Fun fact, this movie has a deleted scene that is essentially complete where Judy has to use the computer of an elephant co-worker. I obviously can't prove this, but it would make sense that the scene was cut because the writers couldn't come up with an explanation for why she would get Nick to stick around beyond the Naturalist Club if they'd previously given her access to police systems. Which is not an excuse to cut it if your solution is just to hope we don't notice that she actually does have access to the system. At this point in the movie, we all know the core of her character is that she wants to help people and make the city a better place. Yet she doesn't give a damn about Nick when performing entrapment or when they get taken by the mob, which is when she is utterly destroyed beyond repair.
I'm going to find out what you did to that otter if it's the last thing I do.
Very poor choice of words.
This is the point of no return. If you reach this point and you still want to write her as a likable yet flawed role model type character, then you either have to have her confront these terrible things she did and work hard to redeem herself, or just rewrite what you've written so she doesn't do them in the first place. She apologizes to Nick for what she says at the press conference, but never mentions these little moments because the writers didn't even realize they'd written them. You can't get her back on track without addressing this, which is why her apology does nothing for me, because she isn't apologizing for the worst of her transgressions. The Manchus chase does something to salvage her character, and while it's refreshing to see her think on her feet and actually use her brain after the Mr. Big scene, it doesn't last long. Because she obliterates that image of vague competency by being outthought by a scam artist with an idea which would not only prove her story about the savage predator, but also help find it, and then fails to call for backup when she tracks them down. She's idiotic enough to forget to put her phone on silent in a criminal stronghold, and then she fails to confirm her night howler theory about it being a term for wolves despite knowing there is also a garden plant with the same fucking name. It really is just a steep slope once you hit Mr. Big's house for her intelligence. It is utterly horrible. At that press conference, she displays a level of social obliviousness that would make Legoshi blush.
Excuse me.
She makes a decision that could only hurt people because there is nothing about anything she says in that conference that is useful. Only inflammatory nonsense that could only serve to further incite division in the city, which I would absolutely argue contradicts the core of her character. Again, if I didn't know she was actually that dumb, I would think she's taking the piss when she's talking to Nick. And then, finally, after making everything so much worse for the city by exacerbating the division between prey and predators, she resigns, effectively running away from her mistakes, only for a pastry chef to outwit her.
You are an embarrassment to the nation.
And the last few scenes just... There's nothing nice to say about any of the characters really, and I'm not recapping all of that again. It really is such a shame though, because in terms of how she's characterized early in the movie, she is extremely likable. We get to see multiple different sides of her. She has a few ups and downs and manages to deal with some better than others while still trying to remain upbeat despite the circumstances.
Tomorrow's another day.
She just gets completely and utterly fucked by absolutely dreadful character writing that makes her look worse and worse the longer the movie goes on. And even worse, just like the rest of the voice cast, Ginnifer Goodwin does an excellent job, and it's wasted.
So?
Well, you probably forgot, but I was top of my class at the academy. Boom! 200 tickets before noon. Actually, it's your word against yours. And if you want this pen, you're going to help me find this poor missing otter, or the only place you'll be selling popsicles is the prison cafeteria. It's called a hustle, sweetheart.
From all the research I've done, the only reason this movie is a success is because of the work done by everyone else.
There's like hundreds of thousands of different characters.
And we need to make them look like there's something that's real, that's breathing, that is touchable.
We discovered it wasn't, one additional problem moving from hair to fur. It was, as many problems as we had species of animals. Every animal's hair is different in its color, in its structure, how shiny it is, how rough it is. We're used to clothes that fit well on humans, but a nice shirt won't drape or feel right on a fox who has shoulders that are sloping down completely differently.
The first thing they told me was this will not be simple. There's 1,800 plus shots. There's probably about 25 in the entire movie that are actually static. Yeah, there almost wasn't a shot on the movie that scale wasn't important for us. Even our two main characters are fairly different. But certainly, without a doubt, the most challenging sequence for scale is going to be the chase through Rodentia. And it let our artists see just how difficult this would be to film in real life and how the character would be coming in and out of focus when they decide to move quickly, as little rodents do.
One discussion that came up all the time was, what's the sky gonna do? As we go from Sahara Square to Tundra Town, should Tundra Town be constantly in a state of blizzard? Or do we respect that it is a city in one place with manufactured climates, which is what it really is?
I thought of the materials that I was stepping on. So when we were in the snow, our camera is very slow. When we're in the city, every shot is moving, trying to create that feeling that somebody's in a crowd of people.
Were there technical challenges that had to be overcome to make that all happen?
Our software really evolved quite a bit just for Zootopia.
As an actor, I was cast as Judy. I provided her voice and even some of her personality. Being that she is animated, the other half of her acting was done by the animators. On Zootopia, a team of over 70 animators worked on every animal.
What it was for me is the complexity of the world. It was like not just about the animals, but having a world supporting those creatures in a very complex way.
A city built by animals, who walk on their hind legs with pants.
You have to kind of like look at the animal and almost characterize how the animal moves. So really trying to exaggerate what that animal is.
We're trying to figure out how do we make these animals that walk around on 2 legs feel not like a person, but like their animal counterparts that walk around on 4 legs.
On Nick, it was the elbows out. I always felt human.
Yeah.
But if you bring the elbows in and keep them in, it looks more canine then.
Yeah, because their shoulders are actually on the sides of their body, right? Like in the beginning of this movie, I was thinking like, oh, we're gonna have just like a C curve for their back. Like that's how we're gonna make them feel animally. So I drew that for Byron and I sent it to him and I was like, what do you think about this instead of what we had before, which is a very human looking body? And then he sent that drawing back with a squirrel back where the back, the immediate back is just a straight line. And then when it gets to the hips, it kind of like comes out like this. So you get this kind of S curve down the back. Whereas, so they don't feel like they're slumped over, but that was like a revelation, the squirrel back.
Seeing Jennifer in the recording studio, there was like a bouncy quality to her performance. And so a lot of the animators would look at the reference of her and say, okay, we're gonna try to incorporate a lot of her gesturing just because it felt so natural for her character.
I almost feel like I can see exactly what Jason is doing.
Yeah.
And it translates to Nick.
From everything I've seen behind the scenes, these people are responsible for the inception of this idea, and I thank them for creating it.
However,
if they did indeed have a large hand in the writing of this script or the formation of this story, then they have absolutely proven beyond a shadow of a doubt where their talents lie. I know they are not credited for the screenplay of this movie. They were only on the story team. But I pick on them because these two are the directors. Even though they're working at Disney with all their meddling in creative projects, surely they must have still had some say in whether this script was acceptable or not. Making a movie this badly written is an accomplishment, especially when you consider that this is a world with no magic, no fantastical creatures or made-up complicated rule sets that must be abided by. Zootopia is basically our world, but with animals instead. A lot of work went into creating it, but it's a pretty simple concept. Falling this short when you have so much working in your favor, it's almost impressive in just how unimpressive it is. And as for the people who actually did write the screenplay, I hope you too thank your lucky stars daily that you had so many talented people propping you up. Alright, let's do Harry, also known as Nick. He's an odd one. He's probably my favorite character of the movie, if only because he displays occasional bursts of intelligence.
Well, that is high praise.
But he is a little inconsistent. Not nearly to the same level as Judy, but he still has problems that arise once the plot gets going. To start with, he seems to be a pretty straightforward small-time scam artist, and when Judy first enlists his help, he plays that part pretty well by consistently trying to get in her way and just by generally being unhelpful. He displays plenty of intelligence and initiative early and even once he starts working with Judy. However, once they get taken to Mr. Big's place, he's effectively neutered for the next half an hour. From here on out, Nick becomes a semi-consistent doormat who will put up with any near-death experience Judy puts him through with nary a complaint as long as he thinks they're still friends, which...
Come on, man! Get a life!
Stand up for yourself, please? His intelligence remains throughout, at least until the final scenes, and although he regains his agency once the kidnapping case is closed, he never questions Judy dragging him into increasingly dangerous situations. Everything a character does or doesn't do in any scene they are a part of characterizes them. Nick almost dying to Mr. Big as a direct result of Judy's idiocy should enrage and worry him. He's been messing with her all day, but this is the moment he should outright demand she give him the pen. Instead, nothing happens, and we immediately go on to the next scene with him still following at her heels. Dude, she almost got you killed and has yet to even acknowledge it or apologize. The Manchus chase makes this worse. This time it isn't Judy's fault, but that doesn't change the fact they are both attacked and almost killed multiple times. And Nick still follows her like nothing happened afterwards. In fact, he actually seems to become more comfortable around her because he opens up about his childhood. During the chase itself, we get this moment.
Go!
And the fact he can't quite bring himself to abandon her is a potentially great character moment, but it doesn't hit quite like it would if he'd showed open dislike for her after Mr. Big's house, since that would provide a sensible and interesting contrast, to have him hate her yet be unable to abandon her. It's still a heroic action, but one that, once again, never gets addressed. After the chase, Nick acknowledges Judy saving his life.
Garrett, you saved my life.
But she never mentions that he couldn't bring himself to abandon her even after she'd told him to go, which makes her look like an almighty prick and him look like a spineless wimp. You wouldn't even have to have them talk about it, just any kind of acknowledgement, even a dismissive one, would be fine, so we know she cares about what he did for her.
Thank you, Arthur. I don't much like being saved, but when I have to be.
I understand.
She doesn't need to thank him immediately, just at some point, please. And to be as clear as possible, when I say these moments make Nick look like a wimp, I mean socially. This is undeniably brave, especially as you can tell he's still terrified of Manchus, but in terms of Nick's relationship to Judy, until the case is resolved, he is firmly a follower, which doesn't make sense when you consider his previously combative personality, combined with how little she seems to value his safety. When Nick and Judy first meet, she seems to be the more socially dominant of the two.
There aren't any Fox ice cream joints in your part of town. Beat it!
You're holding up the line.
Of course, I could let you off with a warning if you were to glove those trunks and finish selling this nice dad and his son a
jumbo pop. Please.
But that's completely subverted when the movie reveals he was playing her. The real Nick is extremely cocksure, casual, and utterly unthreatened by her presence.
All right, Slick Nick, you're under arrest.
Really? For what?
Which is part of why it's satisfying when she gets one over on him in their next meeting, even if it was a complete coincidence that she found him in the first place. Despite that, Nick doesn't roll over and still puts up a good fight while being dragged around the city. I said it earlier, it's an entertaining battle of wits, which is why I can't help but see him as a wimp after Mr. Big's house. Because we're missing a scene where he challenges Judy or threatens to just straight up leave after she nearly got them both whacked. It's almost like we've got two different Nicks in this movie, one with balls and one without. From here until the mental asylum, because he never complains once, it comes across as though he's putting himself at her disposal and she's just taking advantage. Which is weird because even the spineless Nick is more than smart enough to know she really doesn't deserve it after doing nothing to make amends for the mansion. And as a result of this sudden, unexplained shift in Nick's personality, this little moment bothers me a lot more than it normally would. He could leave. He makes the conscious choice to stay behind, distract Manchus, and save her life at the risk of his. Judy saving him in return isn't as noble because she just grabs him on instinct, but she still saves him. He then thanks her for it, and she never returns the gesture. The words themselves aren't that important, it's what the gesture means. The fact thanking Nick never crossed her mind annoys me because he deserves thanks more than she does since he sacrificed his chance at escape to help her. Up until they connect on the gondola, I wouldn't blame a first-time watcher for thinking Judy views Nick as more of a useful tool than an equal, because that's how she's been treating him, and what's even more annoying is that since this scene, he's been letting her. Before the mansion, he always showed open dislike whenever she kept stringing him along, but afterwards it's like he's been mind-controlled to just do whatever she tells him, which is lame because it contradicts how he was previously characterized. You can absolutely make both cocky, sarcastic Nick and passive she's McQueen Nick work, but you have to actually pick one and stick with him.
Please.
On the gondola he opens up, which still weirds me out even now considering what I just went through, but whatever, he's opening up to her for some reason. And then we get one of the most consistent aspects of his character, which is the ability to outsmart Judy. Not exactly something to be proud of, but there you go. From there, it's the same situation with the mental asylum. He just seems to have accepted the fact that he might be about to die again with no complaint. Where is this Nick? What happened to him? Was he lobotomized off screen? Why have you become a footstool? Although his takedown of her is satisfying at the press conference, it isn't quite complete. If, for whatever reason, you're going to have him meekly accept getting dragged around the city for more than half an hour, then this is the moment that he should blow up on her about nearly getting him killed like 4 times, but he doesn't even mention it. He's entirely focused on what she said and the fox repellent. To have him rip into her for putting him in dangerous situations would also give him a few lines to explain why he put up with it in the first place. But no, instead we just have to infer why he stuck with her. You could argue it's obvious he stuck with her for the pen, but he almost died many times and he never tries to argue her for it after any of his near-death experiences. He just lets her give it to him in her own time. You could also argue he stuck with her because he sees similarities between them in that she's trying to achieve the kinds of goals he gave up on years ago. But that's never addressed either. The most we get is this.
Never let them see that they get to you.
And then he opens up about his childhood. It isn't even implied that that's why he's sticking with her. He seems to just be giving her advice because he doesn't want her to give up. We're almost there. All he needs to say is something about how he wants to prevent her ending up like him, but nothing. The only other argument I can really think of for why he stuck with her is because they were becoming friends, but this moment really throws a half stick of dynamite in the works.
I'm on the Emmett Otterton case, and my evidence puts him in your car.
I like to think that if I was put in a room with my friends and there was a button that said kill everyone in the room, they would not push it. I might start reconsidering our friendship if they did. For, however long I've got left to consider our friendship. And Nick sticks with her through all of this without complaint. But again, we've been over this, balls cut off, footstool, etc, etc. As far as I'm concerned, this scene is what saves Nick from just being a complete pushover.
I think you said plenty.
It's not like a bunny could go savage.
But a fox could, huh?
You're not that kind of predator.
The kind that makes you think you need fox repellent? Are you afraid of me? Do you think I might go nuts? Probably best you don't have a predator as a partner.
For the first half an hour of the movie, they have a really great back and forth, and this is just him finally finding his dignity again. After that, I like his character in the apology scene. He doesn't let her off the hook until she apologizes for everything the writers realize she did. But immediately after that, he makes what would easily be the worst decision in the movie if this script were, normal levels of bad, and shows his face to Mr. Big again. Yes, he knows Judy is on good terms with him now, but why? Would anyone in their right mind push their luck and show up again after almost dying the last time? And then he's just idiotic in that final scene, as is every character really. Prior to that, he was easily the favourite for semi-sensible decision-making, but it really tries as hard as it can to drag him down to Judy's level.
Oh, what you gonna do? Huh? What you doing? You gonna shoot me? Yes.
No!
As far as resolutions go, Nick joins the police, which is a payoff to Judy offering him the chance earlier in the movie and is pretty on point with one of the themes about not judging a book by its cover. It's a fine resolution to his character in this movie considering his history. I just wish his characterization had been more consistent throughout, but then again, there isn't really a character I don't feel that way about, so I suppose that makes him the best of the worst. There's already plenty of videos out there criticizing this movie for its many flaws. But the reason I still wanted to make this series after seeing so many of them was because I never felt as though they'd gone in-depth enough for my liking. There are many that share my criticisms, but I have, to this day, never seen anyone break down the Natural History Museum like it deserves. I could have genuinely split this video into 2 parts and filled the second one entirely with valid criticisms of that one scene, without ever repeating myself, and it would probably still have been longer than the first part of this series. The other main reason I made this series is because many of these other takedown type videos spend time discussing what they see as problematic allegory for races that exist in our world, in the predators and prey of Zootopia, and how the two groups treat each other. I always thought this movie worked far better as a kind of general allegory for discrimination rather than any specific commentary on specific races that exist in our world. But even approaching it from that more simplistic perspective, I still didn't include any discussion on it for the same reason I never really talked about the themes outside of a casual mention. The movie just doesn't deserve it, which is a shame because I don't even hate the main theme of this movie. It's executed badly because the writers have to break Judy's character to achieve it, but if not for things like that, it would have been a fine exploration of the follies of discrimination and prejudgment presented in a way that kids can understand. The movie doesn't simply have Judy do a bad and then learn from it. She prejudges Nick when she first sees him and quickly learns she was wrong. But that's subverted when she finds out he's a scam artist. Now, at first it's easy to assume, wait, did the movie just imply that she was in the right for prejudging Nick by showing that she'd have been better off sticking to her initial judgment of him? Well, no, it didn't. Because that moment is essentially a setup. The payoff for which is the press conference where she makes another prejudgment and the consequences are dire, for her own personal relationships and the wider city. What it seems the movie is saying is, yes, you can make prejudgments of people and maybe they'll even be right sometimes. But that doesn't mean you should, because the consequences for making uninformed assumptions about individuals or groups can be extremely negative. To paraphrase the great philosopher herself, Nick wasn't shifty because he's a fox who happens to be shifty. She got lucky when she assumed correctly that he was up to no good, and the movie has her basically say at the end that her doing that was a mistake.
Your life's a little bit more complicated than a slogan on a bumper sticker. We all have limitations. We all make mistakes, and the more we try to understand one another, the more exceptional each of us will be.
The theme as it stands isn't completely broken. I think it still comes through when you watch the movie quite well. The problem I'm having is just, as I said, I don't feel like this movie deserves a thematic analysis because it can't even get the fundamentals right. Even though I did technically just do that, but we're not going to talk about that. As for the comedy, I don't want this to be understated at all. I addressed it in the first part and I'm doing it again now. The comedy in this movie is its secret weapon. It is the absolute saving grace, and as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that has allowed this movie to maintain its good reputation after so much time.
You ever wonder how your mom and me got to be so darn happy?
Nope. You ready to make the world a better place?
Be careful now. It won't just be your dreams getting crushed.
Oh, she's not a real cop. Our prayers have been answered.
Glorious day. My mommy says she wishes you were dead.
I am a real cop. I am a real cop. I am a real cop.
Oh, I hope you didn't stake your career on cracking this one.
The sheer amount of inventive jokes playing off the fact this movie has animal characters is excellent on its own, but the comedy is far from samey, and that's far from its only trick. There's a pretty diverse range of jokes made throughout the movie that aren't just about the fact this universe is populated by anthros. There's jokes playing into and subverting animal stereotypes, there's plenty of scale jokes and jokes about odd conveniences that would exist for animals living in this world. There's lots of jokes that are purely character related, there's lots of visual humor that is sometimes related to and sometimes divorced from the existence of animal characteristics. The sheer frequency is impressive as well. In any scene where it's appropriate to have them, there will always be multiple jokes, usually within a matter of seconds. The comedy isn't just limited to the actual jokes in the script, and plenty of additional humor is derived from the excellent voice acting and animation. But, as anyone who has seen this movie will be able to tell you, the cast and crew didn't elevate mediocre comedy into something watchable. They elevated comedy that was already funny, already inventive, and already well written. And there are some jokes that aren't hilarious on their own, but they hit you so consistently it's hard not to be at least a little won over. Now, as this movie has reliably proven, being able to write good comedy certainly doesn't translate directly into storytelling talent. But what really interests me about the comedy is not just how well written it is. What gets my attention is how well placed almost every single joke is. There is care taken with the kinds of jokes that are made throughout the movie to ensure they don't undercut the tone a particular scene is trying to set, or, usually, damage characters. Which tells me the people who wrote them must have had at least a basic understanding of storytelling, an understanding that somehow didn't help the rest of the movie out in any way. Or maybe it did. Maybe the guy who did the comedy was the only thing keeping this movie from being even worse, so if that's the case, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. There's only 2 jokes in the entire movie that I would argue go against this and do end up damaging characters. And they are Nick saying,
"I may have sold him a very expensive wool rug that was made from the fur of a skunk,"
when he should absolutely know better than to try that, and Bogo doing inane bullshit on his phone when he's supposed to be working on the missing mammal cases. All the comedy besides that is very appropriately placed, and even when there are jokes thrown into serious scenes, like when Mr. Big is about to ice Nick and Judy, they don't actually damage character or undercut the tension of the moment. Because although it makes no sense that Nick would try and sell him that rug in the first place, what he says afterwards is well justified.
If you're mad at me about the rug, I've got more rugs!
If you're mad about the rug, I've got more rugs is such a stupid offer to make, and it's funny because the fucking rug that got him into this situation in the first place is the best he has to offer Mr. Big for his life. From Nick's perspective, that isn't a joke, it's not funny, but from ours it is because as the audience we can appreciate the irony. There isn't a single joke in the press conference scene because trying to be funny there would just ruin the tone it wants to set. Well, unless you count this as a joke. But it's not something that's immediately apparent, and even if somebody noticed this the first time round, it still doesn't affect the tone because Nick isn't trying to be funny by doing this, and the movie never shoves it in your face. The gondola, the press conference, the aftermath, and Judy working on the farm are all scenes that have no jokes in them because they represent emotional low points for different characters. And whoever was writing these scenes was talented enough to recognize that, which is why Nick starts making jokes again as soon as Judy completes her apology. Because the rift between them has mended and they're friends again, so the comedy can safely return to bring the tone back up. Whoever in the writing room was responsible for the comedy showed ample restraint in where to put jokes. They clearly cared about what each scene meant to the story, so I have no idea how they managed to fuck up so badly when it came to actually writing the story. The comedy in this movie is the only aspect I have almost unbridled praise for. Whoever's responsible for the comedy in this movie made excellent use of this setting, and I want them to write more comedy. However, if they had any hand in the construction, and I use that word as loosely as it possibly can be used, of this narrative, then I would still want them writing comedy, with the caveat that they only be allowed to do so after getting a signed legal document denying them any comment on the script whatsoever tattooed into their forehead. The reason I was so passionate about criticizing this movie to start with is because when it was coming out, it had me hyped, and I don't usually get hyped for things because I like to think I have high standards for media. To get me excited about a movie, it takes something special, and this came out at the perfect time to get me. It had been a long time since I'd seen a truly excellent animated movie, and I was looking to this to be that next home run film, once I saw how beautiful the world in animation was. Obviously from the trailer it had deeper thematic relevance than just being a funny animal movie, as pretty much all classic animated movies do, and this movie gives extremely good first impressions. I had high expectations, so when it came out and neatly swan-dived under all of them, I was extremely disappointed to say the least. This movie had pretty much everything going for it, given the massive amount of money behind it and the freedom that being a new IP affords creatives. Discounting any potential studio meddling, of course. It should have been an easy win, and the script is literally the only thing holding it back. On one hand, I am ever so slightly happy that this movie still has such glowing ratings because the effort put in by actual talented people is being recognized. But a much larger part of me wants that score to crater to something closer to what the movie actually deserves. Because the lazy fucks who wrote it shouldn't be rewarded for putting in so little effort.
Credit where credit's due. You don't deserve any.
Except whoever did the comedy. They at least put in some effort, and if the writers are all responsible for the comedy, then you did great on that, but you fucking suck at writing stories, and you should be ashamed this was the best you could do. Now, a defense I sometimes hear for movies like this, and it's not really a defense but some people treat it like one, is that it's a children's movie. Some people will say, oh, it's just a movie for kids, as if that excuses anything. There are plenty of insightful movies aimed primarily at a younger audience that have tight scripts and consistent, well-thought-out stories that support the deeper messages they want to convey.
The secret ingredient is nothing. To make something special, you just have to believe it's special.
There is no secret ingredient.
Not anyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere is an excellent message that can be applied to so many more vocations than just cooking. But the only reason that message is meaningful in the first place is because it's supported by the story, by a tight script that makes a lot of sense and has consistent characters whose characteristics and development support the theme. In Zootopia, things just happen because the writers blatantly need them to, and they didn't come up with any kind of justification. Judy loses IQ because Nick needs to stick around, and Nick loses self-respect for the same reason. It being aimed at kids is no excuse, not only because there are well-written examples, but because, when evaluating quality, the audience a product is aimed towards is irrelevant. Just because your primary audience may not be as discerning is no excuse to produce poor work. Especially when you spend so much money only to let bad writers squander such a slam dunk concept. This should have been a simple comedic buddy cop movie at its core with a deeper message about discrimination. Easy concept, but none of it holds together logically, which cripples the message in turn. Like, this movie one-upped my worst case scenario. I'm still getting over that. Now, as I mentioned briefly in part 1, before its release, this movie was entirely different. Nick was the protagonist, the world and story were darker tonally, and the world itself was more oppressive. The basic plot seemed to be the same, with predators being turned savage by the mayor to push predators out of the city, but all the major beats in the story connected together differently. One of the main reasons they made the change is because they were concerned that with Nick as the protagonist, his cynicism would bleed into the audience and cause them to look at the world from a similarly jaded, cynical perspective instead of being more optimistic.
Since he was cynical, the audience became cynical about the city itself, and that was a big problem.
There was nothing for the audience to discover. It was pretty blatant that this guy was miserable, so it just came out the gates negative.
For anyone who already knew this, and was thinking that such a significant change in story so late into development should grant the writers some leeway in their script not being as tight as it could have been.
Many, many months into production, even though we had Nick, maybe Judy should be the one who is telling you the story.
Perhaps it's true that this is the reason this story is full of holes, but that was their decision to make. If they were incapable of working within those time constraints, they should have stuck with their original vision, despite a desire to make it easier to root for the world from the beginning. Now, I will admit, I'm a little suspicious as to whether this change they made in the story was actually voluntary. They say it was, but when their careers with Disney are on the line, actors and crew members are usually smart to keep their own viewpoints to themselves, for fear of what might happen if they express what they really think. My point is that great writers are able to work deftly within limitations because the stakes in a well-written story are built on cause and effect, which is all about limitation. Hypothetically, if someone within Disney had mandated either a lightening of the tone, a change of protagonist, or whatever, it was still absolutely possible for them to have done far better with pivoting their story than this. Look, to finally finish talking about the writers and the writing, all I really want to say regarding the people who wrote this movie is that whoever is primarily responsible for the main plot of this film as it is, whichever one of you fuckers put blood-inked pen to Necronomicon page and produced this movie's storyline, please, never do it again. I think we can all agree you've written enough for one lifetime. So, yeah, bad movie, big disappointment, and now, after so long, I can finally say goodbye to Judy's gormless face. Wow, that seatbelt did literally nothing.
You know how they say it's been a pleasure? It hasn't.
Hopefully, the sequel will fare better. Oh, God.
Damn it. No! The fuck is their problem, man?
Here we go!
We literally just saw 5 seconds ago Bellweather brought 3 corrupt ram cops with her. Ram or prey? I don't even need to look that up. Same with hippos. They can be predators. Predators? Predators. Same with hippos. They can be predators in that they can kill. Fucking kill me. Ah. Same with hippos. They can be predators in that they can fucking tongue. They still haven't explained how They still haven't explained how Bellweather even knew where Judy. Fuck. They still haven't explained how Bellweather even knew where Judy. That was bad. They still haven't explained how Bellweather even knew where Judy had crashed. Oh, that's not how you're meant to inflect that. The sentence continues. Sentence, not sentence. Okay. They still haven't explained how Bellweather even knew where Judy had crashed in the train. Fuck! Oh! I can do this.
You think you can do these things, but you just can't!